Western Illinois head coach Joe Davis. The team came up short at Lindenwood this past weekend. This weekend they'll be at Eastern Illinois, the first matchup between the teams since 2016, and where Coach was previously the offensive coordinator. So, Coach, some thoughts about your team, and we'll go to some questions.
Yeah, tough one to swallow here this past Saturday. Talked to our team a lot about, we're still at a point where we need to learn how to play, competitive Division I football for 4 straight quarters. I think for 3.5 hours, or 3.5 quarters there, especially on offense, really played pretty good football, and the special teams, came up with some massive plays throughout that game. And really put ourselves in position to win that game multiple times, under 3 minutes to go in the game, and couldn't get it done, and have taken a lot of pride on protecting the football this year as a football program. And throughout that game, you did a great job of protecting the football, and then the levee sort of broke there at the end with the late fumbles. So disappointing loss. Felt that one, just from a team standpoint, on a talent standpoint and a depth standpoint, that was a very competitive game for us. A game that by all accounts we should win that game, but we didn't. And so we're on to our next challenge here. And again, for the most part, we're a healthy football team. Certainly have a lot of work to do on the defensive side of the ball, especially. But excited here for this next challenge, going to play a really, really good Eastern football team on Saturday.
Thanks, Coach. We'll go to some questions. Zaria with the Daily Eastern News. She is up first. Go ahead, Zaria.
Hey, Coach. How are you?
Hi, Zaria.
How does it feel coming back to the program that you worked with previously, and knowing how talented of a player Pierce Hawley is?
Yeah, my family and I had a great 2 years at Eastern. I loved working for Coach Wilkerson, consider him, a great friend and mentor still. And I know what that program's all about. They're all about the right things, and I learned a lot there in 2 years. So a lot of respect for the program. Pierce, obviously spent a lot of time with Pierce. He's a very talented player, very cerebral football player. I recruited Pierce out of the portal, seems like yesterday, and now he's finishing his second year at Eastern. So very, very well aware of what Pierce is capable of. And, he's an absolute master of the operation of the offense. He's still to this day, probably one of the better quarterbacks I've ever had the privilege to coach. So, when you have a quarterback like that, regardless of record, regardless of score, you're never out of it. And I'm sure Eastern is very, very happy to have him.
Sorry, you got follow-ups? Is that good?
Yeah.
Coach, I got a couple here from Dan who couldn't be with us. And part of it is referencing Zaria's. What's it like to go up against players like Pierce and MJ Flowers that you coached so successfully last year at EF?
Yeah, it's great. It's a big challenge for us. We're going to have our hands full Saturday again. I think this time of year, every team's got their nicks and bruises, and they're missing key guys. Certainly Eastern's no exception to that. We're no exception to that. And, so again, huge challenge for us. I mentioned Pierce is, in my opinion, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I'm sure he doesn't have the numbers and the stats that he probably wants, but one thing I know about him, he doesn't really care about any of that. He cares about winning. He's about the right things, and will fight and claw and scratch, until that last second goes off the clock. MJ is a similar type player, just, hard hat, lunch pail, doesn't complain, just works. And MJ, I was able to see develop into a much more complete back. And certainly you see that this year, really taking his game to another level in terms of carrying the football, catching the football, pass protection, and those type of things. So yeah, 2 really, really good players, 2 high level players in our league.
He also wanted to know, you've quickly developed some success at Western this year. What do you contribute some of the wins to this year?
Yeah, we're still a big time work in progress, Kyle. I think Dan and Barry know that. I think we're searching for some consistency right now. What do I attribute our 3 wins to? I don't know that I could put my thumb on it. I do think that there's been continued buy-in from the players. Again, we have a lot of new players that started this season off, kids that early in the season, we're still kind of feeling their way out. And as a coaching staff, we were trying to figure out, who best fits where. Some of those players have settled into pretty good grooves here as we, cross the midpoint of the season. We've had some older guys that also have continued to improve throughout the season. And ultimately we're getting some pretty good quarterback play, which, regardless of team, in the sport of football, when that position is operating and executing, you have a shot, in every game. So, some of those things are positive. Again, I'm a little frustrated with just the lack of consistency. I feel like we should have a better record right now. I really do feel like we should, but we don't. You are what your record says you are, and we're gonna do everything we can do here to prepare and fight and battle against a great team on Saturday.
And his last question was, what will it take for your team to win against EIU on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, it's our three keys to victory. It doesn't change. It's regardless of opponent. It's, we basically boil the game down to three battles. It's win the turnover battle, it's win the battle for explosive plays, and it's win the battle for high ground. That'll never change as long as I'm the head coach here. And those are all ultimately controllables, and things that we can really focus on, and they're team goals. All three facets of our football team, all three phases, have a direct hand in those three battles, every single game. And so be a big emphasis for us this Saturday, and certainly going to have to, focus and be intentional on winning those battles to have a shot to beat Eastern.
And then generally, what's it for this rivalry now that you played every year as a conference game? It was once played every single year, and then it hasn't been played for 8 years or so. What does it just mean for these two programs to play each other and develop a rivalry and and make it a big deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a positive. Having been in this state for some time as a college football coach, you run into a lot of Eastern football alums and Western football alums, and a lot of folks that are very passionate about both schools. So I think it's a very natural rivalry. I just, as Western's, first year or so as a university and as an athletic department in the OVC, you've already seen some good battles between Western and Eastern and other sports, and expect that to continue. I think both schools have a lot of respect for each other, and the leadership at both schools is good and positive. And certainly see Eastern a lot on the recruiting trail, and I know we as a coaching staff have a lot of respect for their coaching staff and what Coach Wilkerson's been able to do there. So again, absolutely agree. I think it'll continue to maybe be the rivalry that it once was, so excited to see that continue to develop.
Last question, we'll let you go. I know he would have rather had a win, but can you talk about Nate Lamb's performance against Linden?
Yeah, I mean, it was fun to watch. I think as a coach, there's a few times in your career when you see greatness, and you see an athlete that's truly in the zone. And Nate had that Saturday. I mean, he had just an absolute complete grasp of what we were doing on offense. He was extremely anticipatory. I really felt, for basically about 58 minutes that that Nate could do no wrong, in that game. And I'm sure Lindenwood felt the same way. So disappointed to see it end how it did end, but proud of Nate. Not surprised. He's certainly capable of having a performance like that every single weekend. There's been games where we've, leaned on the running game more or whatever, but the more the ball is in Nate's hands, good things are going to happen. He's one of the guys I mentioned, earlier in this interview about an older player that has continued to get better and better and better every single week. I had Nate in my office yesterday, and I said, think about the difference, in our quarterback meetings from week one, we were preparing for Northern Illinois, to now. Just in terms of his knowledge of what we're trying to do and his comfortability in our offense and his ability, to see defenses and play with confidence. So he's one of the guys I'm proud of on our team that just as a football player has continued to get better every single week and practices and prepares that way. And to see it show up on Saturday in a big way was exciting. And again, hopefully we can see Nate continue to improve and progress here down the stretch of our season.
Coach, appreciate your time this morning. Best of luck this weekend. We'll talk to you next Tuesday.
Thank you so much.